Good morning, and thanks for joining us today. I apologize for the slight delay. That is my fault. My camera doesn't seem to want to cooperate this morning, so hopefully I can get it fixed throughout the presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Darren Collins, CFO, and Mark Schmaethurst, Senior Geologist. They will be running through the presentation with you today. There will be a Q&A section at the end, as always, so feel free to input your Q&A into the Q&A box. And the presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can check them out on the company's disclosure on their newly launched website, which I believe launched yesterday and should have the presentation up as well. So with that out of the way, hi, Darren and Mark.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. Maybe you can start with a little bit of background on yourself and then walk us through Bald Eagle Gold.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the introduction, Deborah. And as mentioned, we will make forward-looking statements over the course of this presentation. Exciting day for our company. First day trading on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol BIG, which is a symbol that we were pleased to get. So we're definitely thinking big on this company and off to a great start. Myself, I am Chief Financial Officer of the company. I have about 15 years of background in capital markets, with a substantial amount of that time focused on resources, both in North America and internationally. Joined by Mark Schmaethurst, who's our Senior Geologist and epithermal expert. So we'll walk through the presentation here. We'll give you the details, and then happy to open it up for any Q&A. So just walking through again our cautionary notes, you can reference that on our corporate presentation found on our website at baldeaglegold.com. So the corporate strategy is to build resources through exploration and development of advanced stage properties in well-known leading jurisdictions for gold exploration, development, and ultimately production. So we are looking at using modern exploration techniques, geophysics, etc., and then following up with that on drilling, in addition to reviewing historical data and looking at really the work that's been done on properties either in the last cycle or before that, and really recompiling that data to create an exploration thesis that we are advancing. And that's really how we brought together this initial project in Nevada that Mark will give us greater details on. In terms of the investment highlights of the company, certainly the timing for gold looks extremely attractive. There's a significant amount of stimulus coming into the system, as I'm sure everyone's aware. The Fed's giving guidance that in the U.S. that interest rates are targeted to stay low through to 2023, which really the interpretation of that is the Fed is prepared to, again in the U.S. context, take on inflation here, which obviously bodes very well for gold. We are well positioned in an excellent jurisdiction in Nevada. In fact, the top jurisdiction, according to the Fraser Institute, which came out with a list of mining jurisdictions globally, and actually ranked Nevada as #1 jurisdiction for geologic potential as well as ease of operating in terms of permitting, licensing, etc. We are now obviously a public company, which means that we have a currency that is positioning us with a pipeline of assets that we have under review to look to add additional assets into this company over time. Predominantly focused on the Americas, and some pretty exciting opportunities that we're seeing at reasonable prices. The asset that we have in the company here as part of the go public is again in Nevada. It spans 12,000 acres at the intersection of some major gold trends in Nevada. Nevada accounting for about 80%, a little bit more of U.S. gold production. So we're right in the heart of the leading state for mining, and right at the intersection of two major gold trends, specifically the Battle Mountain and Getchell-Comstock gold trends, located right near Barrick, Newmont, Hecla. So there's a significant amount of activity in the area, and really we've put down our flag in the heart of gold mining. Our team, it's a newly formed company, newly listed, but certainly our team, we've worked together for many years across multiple companies where we've created a substantial amount of shareholder value across those companies. Sidney Himmel, who I'll give his background, who's Our CEO has been a business partner for 15 years, members of the board of directors we've developed good relationships with over time. So we are a group that has done a lot of work together. We know each other very well, and we've created a lot of value and combined really technical, financial, and managerial expertise that we bring to the company. This is really our selection and evaluation process, which again applies to the Nevada asset as well as additional assets that we have under review. So really, you have kind of asset selection criteria in terms of greenfield, brownfield, past producing, and then have a process around that to evaluate really the potential of these assets, and then structure them based on what the asset needs and what we view as reasonable target milestones in terms of creating asset value, and obviously tying that into a capital expenditure profile. So this just outlines a little bit on what our game plan is in terms of selecting and ultimately evaluating and ultimately selecting assets. These are some of the past companies that we've been involved in. Some of these are quite well known. UNX Energy. We started as a geologic concept offshore in Namibia. We ultimately ended up selling that to the Brazilians for $730 million. IC Potash was one of the fastest permitted mines in the United States. In fact, I believe one of the fastest in the last 7 years. That was Sid headed up that project, fully permitted, over 1 billion ton resource, again from initial geologic concept. We brought in Yara. In fact, I was part of the advisory team on bringing in Yara for a significant investment of about $40 million at a 50% premium to the pre-announcement share price and a 30% take or pay offtake. So we know how to structure deals in the resource space. That was a precedent setting deal at the time, and that investment did quite well for early round investors. Namaste Technologies, again, our team on that, myself, I was founding CFO. We raised over $125 million for that company. It went from 7.5 shares to over 7.5 cents a share to over $3 a share. And then subsequent to that, Chiron Life Sciences, where again we put together a company here in Colombia actually, and did quite well on that as well. So again, our team has a track record of delivering value for shareholders, managing public corporations. So we're well equipped in that respect. Here's our management team. Sidney Himmel, again, long-term business partner, contact, just a wonderful man and pleasure to work with. Very diligent, and brings 30 years of capital markets experience as well as experience in resources building public companies. Worked with Merrill Lynch, TD Securities, is pretty well known around Canadian capital markets and internationally as well. Myself, I gave my background. I've worked in both Toronto, the UK, Latin America, Africa. So I've got a good amount of corporate experience with public companies, and certainly a background in corporate governance, accounting, and all the various skill sets that would be required of a CFO. Mark will give a little bit on his background as we get into to the technical section in terms of his experience. We have a number of technical consultants as well supporting Mark, and really supporting our exploration and development of this asset in Nevada. Terry Lane, exceptionally experienced mining engineer, has worked around the world. Hamid is excellent structural geologist, very applicable skill set to the project again we're working on in Nevada. And then Mike Feinstein, who is very much a field geologist, PhD as well as Hamid, and really the man with boots on the ground on the rigs. We are currently drilling, so certainly his contribution in terms of field operations is paramount to us as an operating company here. Board of directors, really a nice lineup here of independent directors as well. Marc-Andre Lavoie is our chairman, exceptional amount of capital markets experience in Canada and in the UK, is on the board of directors of Blackrock Iron Ore, which is a strategic project for the Quebec government, and they're currently in the process of raising $1 billion worth of construction financing. They've raised an exceptional amount of capital, over $100 million over the project lifespan, and they're advancing on that. So again, a very strong resource background. Peter Simeon, absolutely fantastic securities lawyer on the board, who's currently with Gowling WLG. So pleased to have him. And then Ray Harari is a venture capital investor and part of a large Latin American, predominant Latin American family that brings a lot of, again, capital markets expertise to the company. At this point, I'd like to hand it over to Mark Smethurst. Mark, if you could just give us a little bit on your background and then give us the overview of our Hot Springs property in Nevada, please.
Thanks, Darren. Hi, I'm Mark Smethurst. I've been developing properties and resources for over 25 years. One of my greatest successes is an epithermal property in Mexico. Previous workers were poking holes in a corner of the property for over 25 years. I come onto the property and show high-grade gold and silver in 2 structural zones across the whole property and discovered 2 breccia pipes with high-grade gold and silver. My drill program showed bonanza-grade gold and silver at over 1,000 grams. Have the next slide, please, Darren. And here in Northern Nevada, we have the Hot Springs epithermal property. We're in a great jurisdiction. Nevada is in the top 3 of friendliest mining jurisdictions in the world. 83% of the gold produced in the U.S. in 2018 came out of Nevada, 5% worldwide, making the U.S. the 4th leading gold producer that year, and almost 4% of the world's total gold ever. The next slide, please, Darren. That yellow dot is the Hot Springs property. It is at the intersection of 2 gold trends, the northwest trending Battle Mountain gold trend and the northeast trending Getchell gold trend. These gold trends are fed by deeply penetrating structures. The majority of the gold produced in Nevada has mostly come from 2 gold trends, the northwest trending Carlin and Battle Mountain gold trends. These 2 gold trends intersect the northeast trending Getchell gold zone in north central Nevada. The Battle Mountain and Carlin trends roughly line up with deeply penetrating structures of the northern Nevada rift zone. These structures provide the plumbing that channeled the mineralizing fluids. The Fire Creek and Midas epithermal gold mines are found in this rift along these gold trends. The Hot Springs is also found in this rift zone. The Midas is about 50 kilometers to the east on the right side of the map there. The Midas reported bonanza gold grades of over 3,400 grams per ton in a structural trap that they discovered. They're operating at about 300 meters depth. Now the next slide, please, Darren. Here, the Arcosic Triangle is a unique area. The Arcosic sands make up part of the deposited material found in an ancient basin. Above those Arcosic sands are calcareous sediments and limestone, which are important for hosting Carlin-type gold. And so coming across these Arcosic sands is an indicator of being in that ancient ocean basin where you can find the calcareous sediments and limestone. These rock types are found in the Hot Springs Range and the Osgood Range, one range over, where the Turquoise Ridge gold mine is located. I have the next slide, please, Darren. 1893 was the first exploration in mining. Workers were collecting gold nuggets off the surface. The largest gold nugget reported was about 9.5 ounces. In the early 1900s, saw some of the initial mining workings. Early mines were surface operations. In the 1930s and 40s, a structure called the Dutch Flat Shear Zone was becoming defined. It was named after the Dutch Flat Mining Company that operated in the near surface rocks during that time. Work paused for World War II, and in the 1950s, workers showed that shear zone with the gold-bearing veins was trending northeast-southwest in the same direction as the Getchell gold trend. These veins have thicknesses of 3 inches to 2 feet and up to 8 feet thick. Those same workers traced those gold nuggets found on the surface back to gold-bearing veins that breached the surface. The first strong effort to find gold was in the 80s, with shallow hole drill programs from 2 companies. More shallow hole drilling was done in the 90s. And 1997 saw a well-executed surface sampling program that showed a second mineralized structure running parallel to the Dutch Flat Shear Zone. More drilling was done in the 2000s, and this brought the total amount of drilling to over 8,000 meters with 91 drill holes. Now the next slide, please, Darren. Here we see some of the intercepts of the historic drill holes. We see continuity and we see bonanza grade hits. The continuity, long intercepts of grade like B21 and DF32. So B21, we see over 82 meters of almost a gram per ton. And DF32, we see almost 43 meters of 0.7 grams per ton. B21 is also a bonanza grade hit, 1.5 meters at over 32 grams per ton. And that's just below the surface, about 30 meters below the surface. So it's intersecting an expansion feature, an expansion structure that has breached the surface and could be one of those gold veins that led to the deposition of those gold nuggets. May I have the next slide, please, Darren? Structure is key in epithermal deposits, and indicator minerals are important in locating those gold feeder structures. Mineralization is in place in the pre-existing structures such as faults, shear zones, fault intersections, and brecciated rock. This is a generic epithermal model. The model shows where bonanza grades are commonly found, which is about 300 to 800 meters below the silica cap. Our focus is to look at this depth range, deeper than previous workers, and go after the bonanza grades. That yellow area on top is the silica cap. It typically contains anomalous to low-grade gold and other elements. It is often described as leakage anomalies and is seen as a good indicator of higher grades deeper down. The majority of the historic drilling in the 80s were shallow holes. This is great target generating work, showing us to look a little bit deeper. The holes in the 80s showed us the smoke, telling us that there is fire deeper down. I have the next slide, please, Darren. Timing of events is important for Carlin-type gold. Gold on the Hot Springs property is found in the northeast trending Dutch Flat Shear Zone. The Dutch Flat Shear Zone is found in the northeast trending Getchell Gold Trend. The Getchell Gold Trend holds the Getchell and Turquoise Ridge gold mines. The Getchell and Turquoise Ridge gold mines are just one range over from the Hot Springs property. Gold is hosted in calcareous sediments and limestone at those gold mines. Hot Springs has calcareous sediments and limestone. So first, the rock types are deposited. Second, the structures form. And third, the mineralization fluids flow through those structures and deposit. We have the right features here for Carlin-type gold as well. Now the next slide, please, Darren. This is a plan view looking down onto the property. The dark blue is limestone, and the light blue is sandstone. The structures on the property are shear zones, faults, and brecciated zones, and are shown in red, green, and orange lines, all predominantly trending northeast. So there's opportunity here for both deposit types, epithermal and Carlin. Now the next slide, please, Darren. Current exploration. Phase 1 drilling was 2,000 meters. 5 drill holes have been completed. Samples are in at the lab and are queued up for assaying, and we're awaiting those results. Going forward, there will be a top-down and bottom-up approach to the exploration. Structural mapping, surface sampling, trenching, geophysics, and 3D digital models of the geophysics where we can interpret the structures. What I mean by top-down and bottom-up is that what's physically revealed on the surface will be used to adjust, locate, and fit the geophysics model of the subsurface, and that will help us locate drill targets going ahead. Now I'll hand it back to Darren, and thank you very much for listening to me, and Darren can take you through some of the financial material.
Thanks for that, Mark. So again, our first day on market, I have a slide here that looks at the capital structure as well as the dilutive securities associated with the company. Approximately 60% of the capital structure is subject to escrow conditions, and 25.5%, almost 26% of the stock is held by insiders of the corporation. So we are very much aligned with investors in that respect. Basic shares outstanding, 102 million, again, with about approximately 61% of that subject to escrow conditions, and a public float of 41 million shares with an average cost base on that public float of approximately 15 cents Canadian. We did raise $2.5 million as part of our go public process. We currently have, as at the time of listing, about $3.2 million of cash. And when you look at the options and warrants, the majority of those associated with our go public financing. So you see the 10.7 million warrants there at 20 cents. Those came from the go public. At the listing price of 12 cents, and we're trading a little bit over that right now. We have an enterprise value of approximately $9 million on this asset package. So to summarize the presentation, we have a great gold environment, and certainly our management team and board anticipate the environment continuing to improve as inflation comes in. We're well positioned in a great jurisdiction with a solid team that we've put together that's worked for many years. We have a great pipeline and news flow, as Mark mentioned. We have assays in the lab right now with the objective of further advancing the geologic model, which is to prove out an epithermal deposit here. Initial indications look very positive in that respect in terms of the rock, and again we'll see how the results come back. And then in addition to that, we have a pipeline of assets that we're evaluating, and we'll look to broaden out the asset base of the corporation. So that's the corporate presentation, and happy to answer any questions that investors have.
I got my camera working. Good news. Thanks for the presentation. I have a question to start things off, and if anyone else has a question, feel free to input it in the Q&A box at the bottom. So I have a question about your M&A strategy. You mentioned that you have a pipeline of assets you're looking at. Is that in the same region, or are you looking in other states or other jurisdictions as well?
So we have relationships in mineral exploration development really around the world, but the idea of the management team and board is to really focus on North America. So we've seen some things in Mexico that look pretty interesting, but predominantly in Canada, in the U.S., which are jurisdictions that we're very comfortable with. Again, the Fraser Institute put out a report of really what the best mining jurisdictions in the world are. And, it's our preference to stick to those jurisdictions. If something great comes up outside that, possibly, but really we'd like to stay, kind of U.S. and Canada. We say between ourselves, really where we find bald eagles is the places that we're interested in. So that, really is Canada, U.S., and, kind of aligns with our brand and positioning of the company. I will also say that we are very much interested in the U.S. market. We have an OTC listing that we plan to advance here, and really build out kind of our presence in the U.S. And that aligns with our asset focus and the current asset in the company.
And are you focused predominantly on gold, or will you look at other commodities?
We've seen some silver assets that look pretty interesting, but really we're predominantly focused on gold. The majority of the assets that we've been looking at are gold assets, and that aligns with really what we believe is ideal market timing for precious metals, and again specifically gold. It certainly lines up well. I mentioned in the timing points that I made, the position of the Fed, the amount of stimulus that's coming across jurisdictions globally. It's hard to imagine that there won't be strong performance for gold going forward, which obviously drives the economics of projects, drives valuation for discoveries, and for upgrading of mineral resources.
Okay, and I have a question for Mark. The epithermal specialist, the drill intercept success that you described, was that on the Hot Springs project?
Yeah, we drilled through. I can tell you that we've drilled through some of the geology that is characteristic of an epithermal system. So initial observations are very encouraging.
I have a question from the audience. How do you plan to stand out from the other area plays?
I can answer that. So there are obviously a number of companies in Nevada. We track them all quite closely. I really think our differentiator here is, we are right in the heart of the intersection of two major gold trends, very close to, some of the world's, if not the world's largest gold companies. So I think our asset position differentiates us in, what we're seeing in terms of potential across the property, with a significant amount of faults, deep penetrating structures that are, being disseminated across surface. So really, I think, our asset's a differentiator. We are partners on the asset, so we're 50/50s on the asset with a billion-dollar family out of the US. So we have, really a top-notch partner that we're developing and exploring this asset with. I won't say the name specifically, but it's a multi-billion-dollar, very well-known US family, and actually one of the family members is a geologist, and initially did some of the work on the property, and we've obviously advanced it quite a bit from there. I'd say our team is definitely a differentiator. Mark with an excellent background in epithermal deposits, as well as Sid and myself, the board of directors. Mark Monahan, who's been a long-term business partner, who's advisor to the company and a significant shareholder. We've created a lot of value for investors. Myself as executive director, advisor to companies over the last 5 years, I've been involved in, probably about $250 million of financings, from concept over to, combined peak market caps of $1.6 billion. So we've got, a real track record that we bring into this company in terms of, developing companies within the public domain, and we're quite proud of our track record. Humble about it at the same time, but I think it's a big differentiator from other groups that may not have the capital markets and technical background that we have. I think we'll continue to differentiate the company as we add in additional assets and come to market with results for this initial drill program. Again, we've got 6 holes here that we'll be coming out with over the next couple months. We'll provide updates on the interpretation of the rock that we're seeing. We are pulling up some very interesting rock here, and we'll see what the labs have to say. And then obviously building out asset base and the like. So I think from the technical results on our existing project, our team, our partners, and additional assets that we'll add into the corporation, I think we differentiate ourselves well in that respect.
Let's talk a little bit about the assays that are at the lab. The labs internationally have been experiencing a sizable backlog. Have you noticed an improvement in getting results from the assay labs? And when can investors expect to hear your assay results?
So kind of mid to end of April for initial assay results, and we'll provide some updates on that process. Yes, the labs are backed up in Nevada. That's as you mentioned, not a secret to anyone. The market's heating up here, and there's been a lot of exploration activities. So it is taking a little more time than normal to get back assays, but we have a good relationship with the lab, and they are working on it. In fact, we did change labs. The one initial lab that we had was just a little too backlogged, and we moved over to a new lab, which seems to be advancing the assaying in good pace. So if that answers your question.
Sure. And so is the intention to have a look at the results, go through, recalibrate, and then drill again? Can you kind of outline your thought process on your next program?
Yeah, so we've got 6 holes that we've got the majority of completed at this time. Again, pending assay results. We have a 6th hole that we're going to put down as well, and then we're obviously going to do some work on interpreting those results, and we've already started defining really the next drill targets based on the geophysics work that we've been doing, which is really generating some great targeting. The geophysics is correlating very well to the pyrite and chalcopyrite that we have within the property, within the faults and target areas that are typical for gold mineralization within this jurisdiction. The initial drill programs, once those are completed, we intend to come back and do another 5,000 meters of drilling this year. So in total, we estimate that to be about 18 holes that we'll have this year on this asset for announcement. And then really in addition to that, we've identified other mineralization types along the property as well that Mark went into. So we'll think about what we want to do in terms of building out an exploration program for there as well. But really the idea is, to find where the mineralized zones are, to define out the epithermal system that we, all indications point to that we have on the property, and then, continue forward from there.
And are you fully funded for those 18 holes?
We are funded. We are funded for these holes. And, again, just to kind of tie back to what Mark was saying, the idea is that we're taking the information that we have from the historic drill holes, from what we're seeing on surface, and tying that in with the geophysics. So we're staging into depth as opposed to, wildcatting, 800-meter holes. We're, defining the structures that we know are in place. And, the property, one of the most attractive points of it is it's never been really drilled below 200 meters. So we're starting here with, 300-meter holes, and then we'll stage them in deeper as we continue to define those structures down with the, obviously the idea of, intercepting grade and with that depth, which is quite comparable to what you're seeing in, recent discoveries in Nevada. So it's really about, using modern technology to really define the structures, and then following up on that geophysics work and the definition of the structures with very targeted drill programs with, the objective of obviously finding grade and width. And, in the event that, that plays out the way that we're anticipating it to, we're right in the top mining jurisdiction in the world, which really gives us, a great degree of comfort that we will get, valuation and, a lot of attention both from investors and from, other market participants within the area. So we're very, again, to summarize, we're very pleased with what we're seeing. We have a funded program for this year, and we are, right next door to, the who's who of mining in the world and in Nevada.
And so when looking at 2021, from now to year end, what do you hope to achieve, and what would you view as a successful year for the company?
Well, certainly defining out an epithermal deposit. We look to make discoveries here. We look to obviously increase the footprint of what we have in Nevada. Again, I've talked quite a bit about adding additional assets into the company. We'd like to find some additional advanced and highly prospective assets to add in, again focused on the precious metals, and specifically within that gold, although the silver does look pretty good. We'd certainly like to obviously from a financial perspective see our stock and listing develop. This is again our first day, so we're just off to start here, but would like to see our stock obviously appreciate and generate some good volume and returns for investors, and really that being underpinned by results based on drilling and the other corporate activities in which our management team executes on. We have a strong team. I think we make additional hires and continue to build out our team, particularly as we're exploring additional assets and adding various elements to the company. So that's really how we define success over the next year, which again we are funded for.
Just talking about overall strategy with Hot Springs and other assets that you may acquire in the future, is your intention to drill, define a resource, go through multiple technical studies, and eventually build a mine? Or are you exploration specialists? Like, where in the cycle the life cycle of a mine do you find is your specialization?
We are certainly focused on exploration and development. So, the idea is, to identify, assets in great jurisdictions with historic work that we can really go in and upgrade existing resources, historic resources in the case of the Hot Springs property, but then, really look to make discoveries and build out ounces to the point where, we ultimately sell those assets to larger market participants. That doesn't mean that we can't, obviously complete feasibility studies. Our team's done it before. We've done all the permitting work, but certainly I think the ideal outcome would be a large discovery here, building out a substantial amount of ounces and passing on the project to a larger market participant.
And how much drilling do you think it's going to take to upgrade the historic resource into a new 43-101?
Mark, maybe you want to touch on that one.
It depends on our discoveries. I mean, right now, we're probably looking at a minimum of 15 to 20,000 meters. I mean, I've been developing properties for 25 years, and 15 to 20,000 meters is for me an average for like a starting point for getting inferred and indicated. And it depends on the grade as well. So that's why we're after the bonanza grade. That's why I love epithermals. Epithermals are known for their bonanza grade. So the higher the grade, it is the easier it is to develop it and get a very decent resource out of it. So it depends on our discoveries. I mean, we could end up with something very large. We could. I mean, that's definitely a forward-looking statement, but there's a potential here for a second deposit type. So we find something in a second deposit type that really starts to open up a lot of opportunities on this property. So it's early. I would say late green, early brown is where we're at right now. And let us build this out. I mean, my tactic for doing this is going after the super great target and then build out from there. And then we'll have a better understanding, I'd say, I don't know, near 12 months from now, after we do our drilling that we're going to do over the next year. We'll have a better understanding of where we'll be.
Okay, thanks. I have one last question, which really talks about the past successes of the management team. Darren, you and I have known each other for quite a while, and some of your partners and I have known each other even longer. And you have operated in a variety of different commodities, different industries. So why gold and why now?
Well, that's a great question, Deborah. And certainly you and I have known each other for a while, and my partners and partners in this company even longer have had a very long-standing positive relationship with yourself. So we've been involved, internationally, U.S., Africa, North America, across resources as well as other industries. When the resource market turned probably about 8 years ago or so, we actually transitioned into medical cannabis and did quite well there. Still kept investing into resource companies, but really when we started looking at what was next from our perspective in the context of capital markets, we said that the thesis for gold is frankly in my career of 15 or more years never looked better. I remember the last cycle, the valuations on companies just being just skyrocketing what felt like overnight. I mean, there was a number of companies that I can think back to in specific that had $500 million market caps on their assets and call it 1 million ounces, but they just skyrocketed. So I see the potential for that in the future, as do my partners. And really again look at the economic environment with COVID, transition of governments, large government deficits, fiscal stimulus, low interest rates, like the list of items that point to a very strong gold market are numerous. We look at things like Bitcoin, as well as, some people have said taking a bit of the shine out of the gold market, but, the volatility on Bitcoin has been astounding. My position on Bitcoin is, the U.S. government decides that, Bitcoin is no longer something that they're going to permit on, the basis that it has historically. And you see, some significant change in the dynamic of that market, which is definitively a risk in terms of participating within Bitcoin. I look at gold as, a medium of exchange since really, the dawn of mankind. It's an accepted medium. It's exchanged internationally. It's been around a long time. It doesn't have the volatility of the cryptocurrencies. So it may not have, the rapid appreciation that Bitcoin has had here, but I certainly see there being, a very sustained and, long-term potential for the appreciation of the gold price.
Well, I hope you're right. So thanks so much for presenting today. Congratulations on the listing, successful listing. Stock's trading very well today, so it's nice to see. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the results. Remind me again when you think that the assays will be back from the lab?
Mid to end of April. So,
Okay.
call it end of April. We're going to have some news interpretation from the geophysics, the rock that we're seeing back. So we'll have news on that, then we'll have news on the holes, and then we'll have news subsequent to that on the follow-up drill program. So in terms of the Nevada asset, that's how the news will flow there. And one of the things that when we started the listing process, we actually did quite well in the listing process. My credit to the lawyers and the team for bringing that together in a reasonable time frame. There's been a lot of companies that have certainly had issues with the listing process because the market's been busy, and frankly everybody's still not in the office in Canada yet. So some companies have taken a little longer than normal for listing, but we've completed it in about 4 months, call it. So pretty pleased on that. But one of the nice things is we already had some cash in the company while we were completing that listing process. So we advanced forward with an exploration plan with the idea that coinciding with listing, we would be able to generate results out of the gate to share with the market, and that's what's come to fruition here. So when we started the listing process, we are already planning, well, what's our news flow pipeline when we come to market, and we've developed that out in advance. So we're not a stop to our a standing to a running start. We've been running all the way through. So that is going to come out to the market here over the next month or so.
Well, I certainly like it when companies list and have news flow coming. So should be an exciting couple months. Looking forward to seeing those results, and hopefully seeing an acquisition or something interesting as well in the coming quarters. So I think we can leave it there. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to reach out and I'll get those answered from the company. And yeah, good luck with the drilling or the drill results. And yeah, congrats on the listing. Exciting times for sure.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone that's joined the call here. Have a great day.
Thanks.